Well, welcome back to Franco Fridays. I've got a good one for you here today, and that is the Severin release for Two Female Spies of Flowered Panties. This film came out in 1980, and it is really taking the template of the Red Lips films from the 60s and kind of refurbishing it into the mindset of Franco circa 1980. It's a fascinatingly disorienting mix of genres that is classic Franco and how he saw the world going into the 1980s. It really defies conventions. I mean, it just will not fit any general label. The film stars Lena Remey and Lynn Montel. And Lynn Montel was the gorgeous redhead from Zombie Lake, Jean Rollins' Zombie Lake. And they star as two inept, just released from prison spies that are basically incognito acting as strippers. But but unlike the Red Lips films from the 60s, these two girls are more, well, they're just silly. I mean, they just inept. I mean, in the Red Lips films, contrasting this with the Red Lips films, you had kind of a Laurel and Hardy type duo. One was the brains, and the other one was they're both beautiful girls in all instances, but one was the brains, and one was the dim-witted one. In this one, they're both dim-witted, and they're there for pretty much for comic relief. Anyway, they butt heads with an international sex kidnapping ring, and then we get to throw in some countercultural hippies as well. To give you an idea of how this film plays out, I think the opening scene kind of sets the stage for what we're talking about here. Um, so you've got these two girls, Lena Remey and Lynn Montel, that have just been released from prison, and they're stripping in front of these elite proletariat type guys that are kind of, I guess it's a casting audition, and they're terrible. I mean, they're very stiff. They can't dance, and they don't know how to be very erotic when they're taking off their clothes. I mean, there is an art form, I guess, to that. I think these two girls, based on the way they were stripping in the first scene, would be sufficient at any stripper bar in Bourbon Street. But in this case, they were not satisfying the proletariat. And he's saying, you put more passion into this. Don't you? You guys are terrible. You're terrible at this. And this goes on for 4 or 5 minutes, and then he says, "Okay, you guys will do." That's what you got here. It's really a comedy spoof. It's still the template of Red Lips. And the Red Lips films, if you saw some of my other videos, the Red Lips concept that came out in the 60s was really a comedic spoof of the James Bond movies. And back then, with all the James Bond movies that were coming out, they were extremely popular. That there were a lot of comedic spoofs of that. And so this film is no different. It essentially is a comedic spoof, but it's got a lot more to it. It's not, you can't just say this is a rehash of Red Lips. It's a comedic spoof of spy movies. It's a lot more than that. Like I say, it's disjointed. It's disorientingly disjointed because it has chicks and chains elements to it. You've got women torture. You've got women being raped. You've even got a gay choreographer that the sex crazed duo try to rape. That kind of stuff going on. That's supposed to be comedy. There's comedic elements to this. But then you've got scenes that are just pure chicks and chains torture. Burning cigarette burns into people, and titty twisting. I mean, this takes titty twisting to a new level. You've got countercultural elements to this. You've got political and social satire. You've got antisocial elements to this. And as I watched it, I realized, two of my favorite directors, Jess Franco and Rainer Fassbender, who I've kind of dedicated Fridays to showcasing their films and watching them and sharing it with you guys. There is a common thread that connects these two guys. One's from Germany, one's Spanish. Their films are polar opposites in a lot of respects, but they're also uh, common elements to it. And the common elements are chaos theory, countercultural chaos theory, anti-socialism, anti-big government, and they are two of the most utilitarian directors ever. Prolific. Obviously, their output at the times that they were producing or directing films was prolific in both instances, and they were utilitarian in the sense that they were able to have so much production values in their films. What they put on screen with so little to work with is just absolutely amazing. And this film is no different. It was shot in Las Palmas, Canary Islands. And apparently they used the house location for this film was a former house of Christopher Columbus. Or at least that's what Jess Franco says. I mean, I have to take his word for it. But the locations are incredible. You've got helicopter landings in this thing. The Las Palmas is just a beautiful. The Canary Islands is a beautiful place, and I've had the fortune of actually visiting there once, and it is a beautiful, beautiful location. The sets are incredible, and the production values show throughout this film. But this is a crazy, disjointed film. I mean, you've got the Red Lips template, the international sex kidnapping ring. But then you throw in a litany of other things that just take this film right off the road onto the shoulder. You've got Martian. You've got women as Martians that are the kidnapping ring tries to kidnap these Martian women, and they're represented with these gold swim caps and gold panties. They're running around trying to not be kidnapped. They're supposedly Martians. You've got hippies that eventually tangle with the kidnappers, these countercultural hippies. You've got knives on vaginas. I mean, it's just a crazy, crazy mixture of so many different genres that it defies normal convention. And I think for most people this would be a frustrating exercise. But for me, it's a fan of chaos theory, a fan of the Fassbender anti-social, anti-big government, anti everything, quite honestly. And Franco, I think Franco, that's a common thread with Franco. So I think Franco was taking the Red Lips template and just supercharging it. It's like an 8-cylinder on steroids version of that simple storyline. The comedic elements in this are, of course, more of a sexual nature, and they're not like your standard comedy. Obviously, it's not your standard comedy. It's more of a situational setup, like the gay choreographer being raped by lesbian, sex-crazed strippers. It's not necessarily laugh your ass off funny, but it's just the situation is ridiculous. It's just totally ridiculous. But I love it. It's a wonderful film, great production values. I didn't know this until as more as I delve into the Franco films that his mother and father, one was Mexican, the other was Cuban by background. I didn't know that. So that's another little tidbit for you. Now, this Severin release has two cut. Well, first off, this was kind of a limited edition. There was only 3,000 units in the initial run of this thing, and if you got the initial run, you got this alternate cut. This is the Spanish cut, Apple del Fuerte. I have not watched this alternate cut, but I understand it's not materially different. And then, of course, you've got the regular cut of the film. I like the alternate artwork. There's the alternate artwork, and I've got this is probably the artwork you're more familiar with if you've kind of monitored these Severin releases. This is a great release. It's got a 10 to 11 minute interview with Franco talking about the film, and it's got an 11-minute interview with Daniel White, the elusive Daniel White, who of course does a lot of the music for Franco. That was a fascinating interview, and by the way, the film itself, and the fact that it all these different genre elements clash and come colliding together almost incoherently, overarching this whole film is outstanding music by Daniel White. This is some of the best jazz music. If you like jazz, if you like up-tempo jazz, or you like jazz fusion from, say, the late 60s, 70s, like Miles Davis, for example, you're going to love this score of this film. It's great. Then you get a 30-minute interview with the Franco expert, Stephen Thrower. And if that's not enough, you get 8 minutes of location outtakes, which was very interesting. Great film. I give this a 7.5 out of 10. This is not for everybody, but then again, Franco's not for everybody. I think if you like any of the Franco films, and if you like the Red Lips films, I think you're really gonna like this. But this is not gonna be a film that plays to a normal pattern. Again, it's going to defy conventions. You think you're watching a spy movie, a comedy spy movie a la Red Lips, and then you've got Martians with swim caps on, and you've got gay choreographers, you've got international kidnappers, you've got it just goes on and on. It's just a crazy women in chains, chicks in chains scenarios. I mean, you could argue that the film is more of a series of scene vignettes, of disjointed vignettes, than a true coherent story. But you could certainly make that argument. Anyway, 90 minutes of fun, great Severin release, 2 female spies with flowered panties. Thanks for watching. My phone's going off, so I gotta cut this off.